Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to learn how to play Legacy of You. This is a solo-only Euro-style game that has a legacy campaign element to it. It's not a true legacy game. There's no ripping up of any cards, but there is removing some of these cards that you see out on the board, or some of your townsfolk, or various cards from the game, and just putting them away in a certain spot in the box. So it changes up gameplay just a little bit. As far as basic setup is concerned, it's quite straightforward. So let's just start kind of at the top and work our way down. Up here, just off camera, is the victory pile and defeat pile. This is essentially how you win or lose the campaign. If you can be victorious 6 times, then you'll make it to the kind of victory card, or if you are defeated 6 times. Anywhere in between, every time you're defeated, you're going to get a little bit of a boon to make things easier for you. And every time you're victorious, they're going to make it a little harder for you. So they're going to try and keep it a nice balance. Then we have a row of mostly townsfolk cards here. This is the back for the townsfolk cards. And then we have the barbarian deck here. And we have 1 barbarian out at the beginning of the game. Then down here we have our canal cards. So what's behind these is essentially the built canal. So the story behind You is that the Yellow River kept flooding and wreaking havoc on his his kingdom, basically, and so he implemented these series of canals and revolutionized the way to control the water, and did all this while fending off barbarians and things like that. So as you are constructing the canals, you'll remove these cards, and it makes it so as the flood keeps coming in, the water is diverted and you're not drowned in the process. So this is the main objective of the game. This is how you win individual games, is by building each of the 6 canals, staying ahead of the flood, all while not getting overrun by barbarians. And then down here we have some hut cards. These basically enable you to clear this land and build that hut, move the hut somewhere else. And that's going to give you a kind of worker placement spot to gain stuff. So also, behind the canal cards here, you can see that there's trading opportunities. So as you expand and make the river more livable, as you start putting buildings along the river, trade opens up. So as you expand the canals and open up the river, you can see here just below the picture, it's going to tell you what the trade options are. It doesn't tell you what options are going to be under here, but everything that's printed on the board is not going to change throughout the campaign. So you will probably get used to knowing, like I certainly know what's under here, and I'm pretty sure I know what's under here. I don't even know if I've unlocked these 2 yet, or built these 2. Anyways, then you have some buildings. This is very Paladins of the West Kingdom-esque. They start seated on the board, and as you build them and unlock them, they're going to unlock various things. But before you can just go off and build them, you have to have a spot to put them. So right off the bat, you have 1 spot here, and that's this square. So I could build any one of these 3 buildings and place it on that square, gain a provision, but then it's there. If I build one of the farms here, I will get something each time there is a harvest phase. Harvest phase is essentially the beginning of your turn, and it's where you gain your resources. So the more resources you can gain at the beginning of your turn, the better off you'll do. Your outposts here will make it so that the different colored meeples will equal other things. So for example, if I remove this hut, the white and red meeple now both count as each other. So I can use a red meeple for a white spot, or I could use a white worker to go say out and fight a barbarian. Or this here, black and white would be equal. But if I go like this, now blue, black, and white are all essentially the same color. So if I unlock all of these, every meeple basically is a wild meeple. And then last but not least, we have our huts here. By building the hut and removing this card, you're going to gain a worker placement spot to put a meeple on. And every meeple that you put on these spots, you'll actually get back. Whereas opposed to if you send them to build a canal or fight barbarians, you will lose them. You won't get them back. So that's the benefit of building the hut, along with your townsfolk cards here can be used to gain the resources, played to gain the resources that are up here in the left corner, or you can tuck them under these open slots, and you have to have cleared the land to have a slot open. So at the beginning of the game you just have one. You can tuck them under the card to again increase your harvest. So this little sun rising over the water, that's your harvest phase. That's like the beginning of your day, and you can see you get all this stuff to begin with. All of these that you unlock, you would gain those, and any card you tuck. So there's a twofold benefit to clearing the huts. Beyond just getting the resources to build the huts, you also need, like I mentioned earlier, a place to build them. So as you build canals, it's going to open up places to build your huts. But you'll notice that there's only so many canal spots, and we have lots of buildings. So you won't necessarily get every building built and out there. So keep that in mind. What strategy do you want there to be? Do you want to have a really good harvest? Do you want to have your meeples just be wild? Do you want to have a really good harvest this way by clearing spots to tuck cards? It's all up to you. So how do you go about playing a turn or a round of Legacy of You? Well, you're going to start with your harvest phase. So we have some actions here we can take at the beginning of the turn. Right now I have my draw pile, which was just the top 10 cards randomly drawn off the top of this deck before I put out these townsfolk cards. So this isn't like a starting hand, this isn't a deck builder or anything like that. These are just 10 random townsfolk cards. Well, I get to gain 4. That's what this little symbol here means. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. I also get to gain a white laborer. The white workers are essentially the laborers. They're the ones that are going to be building the canals, the huts, the buildings. They don't generally go out and fight. I also gain a cowrie shell, which is essentially the money in this game, and a provision. And then if I had unlocked any of my outposts, each unlocked outpost would give me a cowrie shell, but I haven't unlocked any. I don't have any tucked cards, so this is my starting setup here. Now, again, the goal of the game is to build the canals, staying ahead of the flood. Build all 6, stay ahead of the flood, don't let the barbarians overrun. So, let's look at my hand of cards here. Again, I could take any one of these that I want and tuck it under this spot right here, and then the next time we have a harvest phase, I would gain, in this case, a black worker. Here would be another white worker, a black, or a yellow. But you can see up here, here's an extra card draw plus a cowrie shell. Here's a provision and a cowrie shell. You know, there's lots of different options. Or I could simply turn these townsfolk back into my exhausted pile here, just kind of discard them to my discard pile to gain the top resources here in the brown. So, for example, this lady here would give me 2 provisions. That's pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now without even thinking about it. So I've got 2 more provisions. Now I've got some more people to consider. So I could trade these guys just in right now, gain a white, a yellow, and a blue worker. But I will not have slotted anybody. Okay, that's something to consider. And once I've played all my cards, I have my resources that are down here that I can do stuff with, to build stuff with, and purchase cards. But then once my turn is over, we're going to have another harvest phase. So I may want to consider tucking a card here so I can already go ahead and boost up my harvest phase. If, say, I really needed 2 blue workers. Say, for example, I see my barbarian up here needs 2 blue soldiers to come after it, and this guy offers me, but this blue one's in the red. Well, to gain the red resource, you have to remove them from your townsfolk deck. So you're not removing them from the game. They're just going up here into a discard pile for the other townsfolk cards. And once you go through this deck, which you probably will, it'll get shuffled back in and it'll end up here at the top. But it's no longer in your deck. All right, it's not in your discard pile. So you gained the extra resource, but you lost that card. Why all of this is so important is because these cards are your timer for the flood. Every time you go to draw a card or have to discard a card, for example, when this barbarian attacks, it's going to force you to either discard a card or sacrifice a black meeple. And this is empty. You're going to take all of your exhausted cards. You're going to take your personal discard pile. You're going to shuffle it up and refill. Put it back over here. But every time you refill this, you can see here, when you shuffle and refill, you advance the flood. There's 10 cards here to start with. I just drew 4 and played 4. So I know I can draw another 4 unless I just start killing cards left and right. But then after that, I'm really got to be thinking, man, I'd better clear my canal here because the flood is coming. And if I had gone ahead and just nixed all of these guys just to gain a ton of resources and put them all up there, well, then say my next turn, I play 4 cards, and then I play 2, so I still had my 2 rounds. Well, then I go back and I would have had to draw 2 more. Well, now I'm left with just 2 cards. That means I only have 1 round before the flood advances again and to remove that second canal spot. So it's important not to just be chucking your cards away. In fact, this next action that I'm going to talk about is probably one of the most important early game strategies I can give you, early game tips, and that is to build up your deck. So you have your provisions here, and your provisions can do a few things, but the most important thing they do is allow you to go interact with this top row of cards. So if you want to fight our barbarian, you need to spend the provisions listed underneath them and then spend the meeples. If you do, you've defeated the barbarian, you gain the reward over here in the red, and it goes away until there is the end of the round when you refill this top row. But there's also these townsfolk cards. So this guy on the left, the card here is always going to be free. And then this guy would take 1 provision, 2 provisions, 2 provisions, 3, and so on. When you spend those provisions, you have 2 options. You can either discard the card over here to the townsfolk discard pile to gain that top resource. Say you really need that resource and you need it now. Or you can take this card and put it into your discard pile. Remember, it goes into your discard pile, so it's not helping you stave off the flood for now, but it's building up your deck for future rounds to make it so that you can make it 3 or 4 rounds before the flood comes. So maximizing your provisions and getting cards into your deck to build up your deck at least to 12 so that you can play 3 rounds in the future is an integral strategy, a very important strategy tip at the beginning of the game. There will be times, however, that you have to kill a card, destroy a card. Say a barbarian attacks and you don't have the black worker to give up. You have to discard over here to the town's card discard pile the top card unseen, so you lose that card, it goes over here. Or the first time I build a canal, I've got to kill a card. You know, building canals is difficult, so you probably are going to lose some good men building that canal. So when you build this canal, you get some brick out of it. You know, turned the mud into brick, and you had to fell some trees, so you got some wood, but you also lost somebody. So even right there, you're going to have to take a card. So all of a sudden, if, you know, say you do the canal and this barbarian attacks, you're all of a sudden down to just 8 cards. So important to start building up your deck. And you do that through provisions. You may also take your resources as you start to gain more and more resources, as you start to maybe you trade this lady in for some wood and you find a way to get some brick. Maybe you get a lot of cowrie shells and you trade them in, 3 shells for 1 brick. Then you can start building these buildings. You simply trade back in the resources listed below those buildings. And these 2 sections here, you can pull off any one you want. So I could start with the middle one here of the orange buildings if I really wanted an extra provision. As long as you have an empty square to put it in and you have the resources to pay for it, you can do that. And that's generally going to increase your harvest phase every time. The huts down here, you have to go from left to right. So you always have to start with this one, then go here, here, and here. These, you can pick any. That's pretty much what you have to do on your turn. Those are your actions during step 2 of take actions. You can interact with townsfolk. You can go fight a barbarian. You can build the canal. You can build a hut. Or you can send a worker to one of these worker placement spots, gain what's listed below. Only one worker at any given location at a time. But at the end of the round, you're going to get this guy back. He's not lost. He doesn't go away back in the box like some of these other guys do. So if you have Meeple sitting around at the end of the round and you're like, I don't really want to spend them. I want to hold on to them to fight the barbarian next round. Let's hold. Go ahead and throw them up there in these worker placement spots. It does you no harm because you're going to get them right back. Every time you build a canal, you are instructed to take your boat here and actually stick it on the back of the rule book. You can see there's a little box right here. You stick it right there to help remind you that you can only build one canal per turn. So a game of Legacy of You is going to take at least 6 rounds, but more than likely more. But so say you built a canal, you've put it here. Step 3 of your round, it would be to return it to the the leftmost canal card. So if I built this one, I would put it here. If I built this one, it would come back here. So utilize that rule book. Plus, it has a very nice iconography chart here. After we return our barge, then we suffer attacks. So you'll notice that we're suffering attacks before we refresh the card row and before we do the harvest phase. So we briefly touched on this already. Any barbarian that's out here, you either have to suffer the penalty listed on the left, or you have to bribe them by sending them, in this case, a black soldier meeple, sending them what they want. If you do not defeat them and they attack you, they stay out here. All right, they stay out on the board, and you're actually going to add an additional barbarian, so then there'll be 2. All right, so you suffer attacks, and then you refresh the card row. So let's just say, for example, I purchased these 3 cards. Boom, boom, boom. And I was not able to defeat that barbarian, so she attacked me. Well, the first thing you're going to do is take all of your townsfolk cards and push them as far down as you can to the left. Then you're going to take your barbarian card and you're going to look along the top of the canal here. And right now we just have +1, but as soon as we've unlocked this canal, we're looking at a +2 and then a +2 again. So if both of these were unlocked, I'd have to add 2 barbarian cards. But right now I just have to add 1. So I'm going to slide this over, revealing 1 empty slot. I'm going to add 1 more barbarian, and even though it's the beginning of the game, I already have 2 I need to deal with. Again, if I had unlocked both of these canals, then I would have pushed this over twice and filled in with 2 barbarians. If I had defeated this barbarian earlier in the round and it wasn't there, I would simply just take my 1 and add it there. After you've pushed your townsfolk to the left and you've refilled your barbarians based on the red card count at the top here, then you fill in everything else with townsfolk cards. And you begin a new round. You begin a new round by the harvest phase. And that's it. That's how you play Legacy of You. Now let's briefly touch on how you win or lose. I already talked about how you win. You clear all 6 canals, and then you survive that round. So you have to survive the barbarian attack that final round, then you are successful. There's several ways to lose, though. One is if you ever have to advance the flood, and it would advance onto a canal card where your barge is, you're flooded out, you lose the game. Or if all of these spots along the top are filled with barbarians, you have been overrun by barbarians and you lose the game. Finally, if you ever go to draw cards here and draw cards, or if you're forced to destroy a card and you say don't have enough, so let's just say, for example, I need to do my harvest. I need to draw 4 cards. There's one. All right, well, I am out of cards, so I have to shuffle these up and put them down here. I would advance the flood, but let's just say, for example, I'm ahead of the flood. But I have to take 2 here. I can't draw my 4. I can't get all the way to 4. I've lost the game due to damage. So, lost the game due to flood, lost the game due to barbarian overrun, or lost the game due to damage. As far as the rule book is concerned and some of the cards, both barbarians and not having enough cards is a damage loss. The flood catching up to you is a flood loss. So there are going to be some cards that reference that because, like I mentioned very early on, this is a legacy campaign game. You're going to be removing cards from the game, not tearing them up. So this game does have replayability, but you're going to be removing them from the game, putting them in a special spot in the box, and bringing in new cards from the story deck. We looked at this deck, just at the front and back in the unboxing, and that's still what we're going to do now. But anytime you see one of these golden turtle numbers, so if I unlock this canal card, I'm going to gain these this stuff at the bottom, so I'm going to have to destroy 2 cards, but I also gain storybook entry 24. I would immediately open this book, read 24, and it's probably going to give me some specific cards to pull out, and it would tell me, it probably is going to say, put that into the history section of the box, so it's out of the campaign for now, add these 2 cards to whatever section for the next game. So that's how the campaign works. There's a little bit of story in the storybook that's centered around the actual legacy of you. It's written from the perspective of him, like writing in his journal and the struggles he's dealing with. So it's kind of like this first person account of what it's like to be him. The story is fine, but it's really just there to help you change out the cards so that the game plays just a little different every time. But the core mechanics that we talked about today are always going to be the same. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to do it for our how to play video of the Legacy of You. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.